This is Unaffected. Welcome to Unaffected, a podcast that offers a curated look at some obscure, forgotten, and neglected singers of the mid-20th century. I'm your host, Ethan Stoller, and just a little peek into how the sausage is made. Last episode, I talked about singers with a very low range and another singer with a very high range, and then I finished with some right in the middle. And that middle singer, originally, I thought it would be cool to do someone who was in the middle geographically too. So I thought of Vickie Vieira, whose homeland was Cabo Verde. But then the more I started reading about her and researching, it felt like tacking her on at the end of an episode like that would not do her justice. So welcome to today's episode, who our first singer featured is Vickie Vieira. And as we are wont to do on this show, let's play a clip straight away so you can hear who we are talking about. This is from Vickie Vieira's one and only LP from 1960. This track is called Mãozinha.
Mãozinha, meu mai, mãozinha, consolação da minha vida, fruta de minha jardinha, ai flor de amor. Mãozinha, meu mai, mãozinha, consolação da minha vida, fruta de minha jardinha, ai flor de amor. Serena corre na mar, estrela corre no céu, meu sentido corre na boca, ai flor de amor.
That's Vickie Vieira. She's actually the featured vocalist on this album. The leader is listed as Phil Barboza, who was a jazz trumpeter and band leader. It's from 1960. There's not much in the way of liner notes, except on the back cover, the record proclaims, for the first time, a stereo album featuring authentic Cape Verdean melodies with big band sound. Yes, so the genre of that song is called morna, a Cape Verdean genre that is similar in some ways to Portuguese fado or Cuban habanero, a few others, but it has its own distinct qualities. I'm not musicologically sophisticated enough to understand the exact differences, but from what I read, what distinguishes morna is often the subject matter of the lyrics and the language. So it's sung in the Cape Verdean Creole language, Criollo. And just as a quick refresher, Creole languages are so fascinating. They emerge in societies usually where people have been displaced, usually, unfortunately, by things like the slave trade. And what happens is the adult people who come to the new land have to communicate with their enslavers and other enslaved people who may have come from, say, a different region of Africa than they did. So they develop what's called a pidgin language, which uses pieces of language, let's say Portuguese in this case, combined with their own language that they grew up with. So they have to get through work and they have to communicate. But then when those people have children, a whole new language emerges. That's the Creole language, which has its own grammar rules. It's so fascinating, and it happens time and again in the history of linguistics. And there's some hopeful metaphor there about rebirth and people bouncing back from horrible conditions that is way above my pay grade. So before we continue, let's listen to a uniquely Cape Verdean phrase and melody called So Sabe. This was written by the great composer Eugenio Tavares, and So Sabe is an expression often used in Cape Verdean celebrations, meaning how good or how tasty. And this is Vickie Vieira personifying it in this recording from 1960. Enjoy.
Malcriado canta entre ali, nem bu mãe, nem bu pai, nem bu cresceu ali. Malcriado canta entre ali, nem bu mãe, nem bu pai, nem bu cresceu ali. So sabe, so sabe. So sabe nem brincar, so sabe. So sabe, so sabe. So sabe nem brincar, so sabe.
You may have heard a little tenor saxophone solo leading into the vocals section there. That is played by the great legendary saxophone player, Paul Gonsalves, most famous for being a member of the Duke Ellington Orchestra. And the one story that's very famous in jazz history is that in 1956 at the Newport, Rhode Island Jazz Festival, Duke Ellington's career was kind of on the downswing, but he was playing this festival, and he gave this solo to Paul Gonsalves in the song Diminuendo and Crescendo in Blue. And the solo was wild, and it kept going and drove the crowd into a frenzy. And long story short, it rejuvenated Ellington's career. He was on the cover of Time magazine, and he always credited Gonsalves with that second chance at stardom after Ellington had already been a major figure in jazz and the music world in general for 30 years before that. But that's Paul Gonsalves, who was also of Cape Verdean heritage. And maybe he had just a little more juice that night, being in Rhode Island, home to one of the most vibrant and biggest Cape Verdean immigrant communities, including Fox Point in Providence, where Vickie Vieira hailed from. She was born in Rhode Island to Cape Verdean immigrants, and interestingly, Cape Verdean immigrants were the first voluntary immigrants to the United States from Africa. And there's a really good hour-long documentary I recommend called Some Kind of Funny Puerto Rican, Porto spelled Porto. It's all about the history of Fox Point in Providence and the immigrant community there from Cabo Verde. The Fox Point folks pronounce it Cape Verde, just for the record. Just want to address that real quick. A few years ago, Cabo Verde asked that the international community refer to them that way, similarly to how Turkey has asked to not be called Turkey anymore around the world. So as I sit here, I'm trying to be respectful for what the folks who live there want, but also recognizing that the immigrants in Rhode Island call it something else. So anyway, I enjoyed this documentary, Some Kind of Funny Puerto Rican. And Vickie Vieira's voice is in the program, but she doesn't appear in it otherwise. But it really paints a vivid picture of how tight the community was and what the culture was like there. There's lots of great archival photographs and footage. It's really one of those, if you're interested in just looking even at cool fashion from the earlier part of the 20th century, I recommend it. But Vickie Vieira came from that neighborhood, and she was recognized as a great singer pretty early on in the 1950s. She was a beloved figure in the community for decades, often representing arts and culture. When the Prime Minister of Cabo Verde first visited that part of the world, she was asked to sing at the event. I learned a new vocabulary word trying to describe Vickie Vieira. I've always known the word avuncular, meaning uncle-like, and I was curious to know if there was a feminine equivalent to that, and there is. I never knew this word before, but it's maternal. It means ant-like, and which I think is appropriate for Vickie Vieira since she had, I think, 8 or 9 siblings, and one of those siblings was named Flash Tavares. And Flash and Vickie teamed up musically from a young age and well into later years as an older duet. Some of that footage is on YouTube. And Flash, her brother, was the father of the members of the band Tavares, who you might know, maybe from songs like this one.
Girl, I've known you very well. I've seen you growing every day. I never really looked before, but now you take my breath away. Suddenly
Yes, indeed. That's More Than a Woman from the extremely popular Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Tavares co-wrote and performed that song, and the Bee Gees also have a version of that song on the album, so huge hit. And interesting tidbit about this song, which you probably don't know, but if you are the kind of person who inserts the names of your pets and or loved ones into popular songs as you walk around the house during your day, And if you might have had a cat and that cat's name was Wilton, this song is the best example of how to insert Wilton's name into a song vis-a-vis more than a Wilton, more than a Wilton, more than a Wilton to me. Thank you. Had to get that out. It's basically the reason I picked Vickie Vieira today. I'm kidding, of course. I think Vickie Vieira is a terrific vocalist, and I think it's cool how she kind of pioneered this fusion of the Morna with jazz singing. She was a big fan of the great jazz singers and emulated them a bit, but also stayed true to the Morna genre. I mentioned earlier that Morna is distinguished by the subject matter of its lyrics, which often is kind of a longing for other places or other lands, whereas the Fado in Portugal is marked by a longing maybe on a more personal or romantic level because of the situation of how the founding of Cabo Verde was based on the slave trade and all the agony that came with that. Anyway, so this song is called Omar, meaning the sea. It's another Eugenio Tavares composition, and I love the way that she's kind of that beautiful, plain-spoken vocal that I love so much, but then at the end she has these long-held notes without too much vibrato, just a hint, and just a lovely tone, and the way it trails off, it's really beautiful. So let's dive in one last time and hear Vickie Vieira singing Omar.
Ele deixou-me na praia, punha lenço na mão, diz adeus, uma água no coração, navio que levá-lo, te torna a trazer, o mar bem plano, onde quinta olhar, mar, nos destino, mar, da ponta de lena, bem plano, mar, o Zé que tem, atrás do horizonte, quinta de chorar, bem plano, mar, o Zé que tem, atrás do horizonte, quinta de chorar.
So, another candidate emerging from last episode is Bernadine Reed, because the song that I played called Bernadine was so prominent. There aren't a lot of Bernadines in my collection, and I thought it'd be, fitting. But when I got out my Bernadine Reed album, I saw the very first track on the record was Rhode Island is Famous for You. And I'd already decided to use Vickie Vieira as my primary artist this time. So, perfect fit. Rhode Island, such a big part of this episode. This is a funny show tune written by Howard Dietz and Arthur Schwartz, debuted in 1948 by Jack Haley, who played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. So let's give a listen to this lovely song sung by Bernadine Reed. This is Rhode Island is Famous for You from 1958.
Copper comes from Arizona, peaches come from Georgia, and lobsters come from Maine. The wheat fields are the sweet fields of Nebraska, and Kansas gets bonanzas from the grain. Race horses come from old Kentucky. Ain't the country lucky? New Jersey gives us glue. And you come from Rhode Island, and little old Rhode Island is famous for you.
There are only 21 states named in this song. Well, 22 if you count Dakota as 2. So I've kind of have a challenge for myself to write a version that includes all 50 states. I don't know if I can do better than my friend Risa Mickenberg. She wrote a song called Connecticut's for F***ing. So I might have to defer to her on that one. So anyway, Bernadine Reed had an interesting, brief career trajectory. She came from Kansas, where she shined as a singer in shows and such, and started to get gigs doing commercials. And she sang with a couple of, I call them schmaltzy orchestras, adding a vocal track to a very easy listening kind of scene. But then she signed with Epic Records, a pretty big record label, and made this one LP. And then shortly thereafter, she kind of vanishes from the record. I can't find anything living or dead about her after about 1960. But one thing I love about this one LP she made is that a lot of the songs aren't your typical standards that you see on a lot of the jazz vocal records from this era, including this next song called Ring Around the Moon, which is written by a songwriter named Don Marsh. And as far as I can tell, this is the only recording ever made of this song. It's kind of beautiful, it has this kind of ghostly quality to it, and there's this beautiful kind of Ellington-inspired, actually, chromatic melody, and it's really lovely, and the arrangement is nice. All the arrangements on this LP are very creatively done by Nick Perito. So let's have a listen. This is Bernadine Reed, Ring Around the Moon. Enjoy.
Ring around the moon, shining up above. Ring around the moon, send me back my love. Send me back my
So let's complete our little geographic chain, and we'll next move to Italy via Kansas. Bernadine Reed was from Kansas, and there was an Italian record label in the mid-60s through the 70s called Kansas. And I think it was probably inspired by the heyday of the spaghetti western film genre, because the record label design has a picture of a handgun on it, maybe fittingly. So I have this record on the label by an artist named Ivana Cosetta. I was attracted to the album at first. The cover's very beautiful. She's a very stylish woman. She's sitting on these bleachers in this kind of purplish outfit. And maybe it's not bleachers. It's probably like the ancient Colosseum of Rome or something. But she's looking out into the distance. It's kind of beautiful. And the music's not bad either. And this song has a little bit of that spaghetti western influence to it too. She's not a bad singer either, so please enjoy. This is Ivana Cosetta singing Chitarra d'Amor.
Suona chitarra d'amor per una storia che muore. Una stella si è staccata di blu e coi tuoi sogni sei perduta. Suona chitarra d'amor per una storia che muore.
That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in a couple weeks. I know sometimes I say a couple weeks and it's 3 weeks. I'm doing my best. These are weird, horrible times. I hope you're finding a good way to cope, hopefully with some love and some music and maybe even some activism. And we'll see you next time. If you have a minute, maybe please rate, review, tell a friend. This is Unaffected. I'm Ethan. Thanks for letting me sing earlier. Have a good one.
Suona chitarra d'amor per una storia che muore. Suona chitarra d'amor.
This has been an Ambivert Media production.